More people have died on a road 3 meters wide than on entire highway systems spanning hundreds of kilometers. That is not a metaphor. It is the documented record of Bolivia's Yungas Road, formally designated the world's most dangerous road by the Inter-American Development Bank, and one of 13 routes examined here for one reason only. Each has a specific, identifiable mechanism that makes it lethal. Not age, not neglect, mechanics. The Yungas Road kills through geometry. Carved into a cliff face above a 600-meter drop, it offers a lane barely wide enough for a single vehicle. Downhill traffic holds right-of-way, which means uphill drivers must reverse to the nearest passing point, sometimes 400 meters back, on a surface of wet clay over bare rock, with no guardrails and waterfalls landing directly on the road surface. At the height of its deadliest period, this single route claimed between 200 and 300 lives per year. The crosses planted along the edge stopped being counted long ago. An alternate highway now draws most heavy freight away from the old path, but the original road remains open, used by loaded trucks avoiding tolls and by cyclists who pay guides to take them downhill for the experience. That last detail matters. The road is dangerous enough to be marketed as an extreme sport destination, yet functional enough that working vehicles still use it for transport. 13 routes in this series share that same contradiction, too deadly to ignore, too embedded in daily life to close. The Yungas Road is simply the one where the drop is 600 meters, the shelf is 3 meters wide, and the math has never worked in the driver's favor. Number 13 on this list is not a road that kills you with height, it kills you with water. The Atlantic Ocean Road, Atlanterhavsvägen, runs for 8 kilometers along the Norwegian coast of Møre or Romsdal County, linking archipelago islands across 8 bridges. It opened in 2005 and was immediately named Norway's most beautiful road construction project. It looks, on a clear day, like a postcard. That is the paradox. During Atlantic storms, waves up to 20 meters high roll completely over the road surface, not beside it, over it. Guardrails are stripped away, cars are flipped. Meteorologists have recorded hurricane-force winds reaching 50 meters per second here, a threshold at which a standing person cannot remain upright and a loaded truck becomes a sail. The road officially closes during the worst storms, but that designation means less than it sounds. The ocean does not honor road signs. The most recognizable element is the Storseisundet Bridge. From one specific angle, the roadway appears to bend sharply upward and end abruptly in open sky, like a ramp launched into nothing above the Atlantic. Cars cresting that rise seem to vanish into the air. That image circulated globally and made this 8-kilometer coastal highway a recognized symbol of human ambition set against oceanic indifference. The road stays open year-round. Hundreds of thousands of tourists drive here specifically for the storms, timing their visits to catch the spectacle on camera. Local fishermen use it every single day as ordinary infrastructure. This is the tension that defines the Atlantic Ocean Road, a tourist landmark and a functioning working road at the same time, where the weather is not atmosphere or backdrop, but a permanent, unscheduled participant in traffic. Rank 13. 12 takes us inland, upward, into the Andes. 12. That's where Paso Los Caracoles ranks on our list, and the number feels almost too neat for a road that spirals through the Chilean Andes in 29 consecutive switchbacks, stacked so tightly on the mountainside that from the valley floor, the whole sequence is visible at once, coiling upward like a snail's shell. That's where the name comes from. Caracoles means snails, and the geometry is precise enough to make the metaphor redundant. At 3,179 meters above sea level, this is the primary land crossing between Chile and Argentina along this stretch of the Andes. It moves enormous freight daily with no alternative route. The paradox is this: The pass looks spectacular, and it is, but the same features that make it visually extraordinary are exactly what make it dangerous. The Aconcagua sits in direct line of sight from here, nearly 7,000 meters of rock and ice, the highest point on either American continent. Its glaciers keep the air permanently humid. That moisture settles on the road surface, and when temperatures drop below freezing at the ridge, which can happen on any night of the year, including the southern hemisphere summer, it becomes black ice, invisible against dark asphalt, offering no warning. At this altitude, engines lose power. Drivers lose focus without realizing it. Most of the bends are blind, meaning oncoming traffic appears only after the turn has already started. On the outside edge of many curves, there is no guardrail, just a low stone curb or nothing at all before the drop. Heavy trucks use this road continuously. Passing one in the tightest hairpins demands precision that leaves no margin. Winter closes the pass entirely. Snowfall renders it impassable even for equipped vehicles. The rest of the year, the traffic does not stop. There is no other way across. From here, our list leaves the mountains behind and moves toward the coast, where the danger is not the void below, but the water arriving sideways, waves the height of a building. A road can have exactly 99 curves and still not be an accident of geography. Tianmen Mountain Road in Zhangjiajie, Hunan Province, ranks 11th on our list of the world's most extreme mountain passes, and its curve count was fixed deliberately by engineers who understood Chinese numerology. 99 symbolizes infinity and eternity. Every hairpin was intentional, every loop was calculated. The result is 11 kilometers of asphalt that wrap around the mountains several times before reaching the summit plateau, climbing 1,100 meters from a base elevation of roughly 200 meters to the peak at 1,300. When you watch footage of this road from a drone, the logic becomes visceral. It looks like a white spiral stapled to a vertical wall of green rock, a single architectural gesture rather than a transport corridor. Built in 1998, the road almost immediately exposed the limits of conventional engineering assumptions. The average gradient is steep enough that standard passenger vehicle braking systems reach thermal overload before the halfway point of a descent. Provincial authorities responded by banning private vehicles entirely. Only specially modified buses are permitted, operated by drivers who hold a dedicated certification for this route alone. Passengers consistently describe the experience as flight. Most turns hang open over the abyss on one side, and the chronic mist of the Zhangjiajie Canyon system erases the visual connection to the valley floor, leaving the impression that the road is suspended in empty sky. The mountain itself reinforces that sensation. Tianmen, meaning heavenly gate, rises from subtropical gorges to 1,300 meters, and the architecture of the road seems to acknowledge that reaching it was never supposed to be straightforward. Next on the list is Zoji La in Indian Kashmir, where danger follows an entirely different logic, not design spectacle, but military necessity carved through one of the most geologically unstable terrains on Earth. Every day, without exception, military convoys drive over the edge of the world. That is not an exaggeration. It is the operational reality of Zoji La Pass, the single land corridor linking Ladakh to the rest of India, perched at 3,528 meters in the western Himalayas. Remove this pass, and a region of several 100,000 people is not inconvenienced. It is severed. Completely. There is no alternate route, no bypass, no contingency road. There is only this. And what this is, exactly, is worth describing plainly. The road surface at Zoji La is a 3-meter wide strip of broken earth, pressed between a vertical rock face on one side and an unguarded drop of several hundred meters on the other. No crash barriers, no guardrails. In the narrowest sections, the track is barely wide enough for a single vehicle, which means that when two trucks meet head-on, one driver must reverse, slowly, with precision, along the rim of that drop until the other can pass. There is no other way to manage it. The pass closes for roughly 6 months each year, from November through May, buried under snow. The moment it reopens, traffic runs continuously, day and night, because the cost of every lost hour to Ladakh's supply chain is immediate and concrete. Monsoon rains turn the surface to mud. Shoulder seasons coat it in ice. The conditions shift without warning, and the road offers no forgiveness for errors in judgment. The reason Zoji La ranks 10th on our list has nothing to do with dramatic scenery or the recklessness of its drivers. The danger here is not incidental, it is load-bearing. This pass exists because it must exist, and it is used because it must be used, regardless of conditions. The army, the traders, the families, the livestock, everything funnels through this single needle's eye because geography has made no other option available. From here, we move to a road where the mountain did not force anyone's hand. Someone simply chose to build it anyway. Your car insurance becomes void the moment you turn onto it. That is not a warning sign on the roadside. It is a clause written into the rental contract by almost every car hire company in New Zealand. Skipper's Canyon Road, in the Otago region of the South Island, roughly 20 minutes north of Queenstown, is one of the very few places on Earth where danger has been formally acknowledged, measured, and encoded into commercial law. It holds number 9 on our list, and it earned it. The road is 22 kilometers long and was cut by hand directly into the cliffs above the Shotover River around 1883. The men who built it were gold miners, and they had no interest in engineering elegance. They needed a route to the river's gravel banks because the Shotover was then considered one of the richest gold-bearing rivers in the world. Thousands of prospectors were willing to inch along an exposed rock ledge with nothing between them and the canyon floor hundreds of meters below. The road was the price of admission. What they carved has barely been softened by time. The surface is loose gravel. There are no guardrails. Blind corners arrive without warning. The lane width is so narrow that two vehicles traveling in opposite directions must negotiate their passing with careful, deliberate maneuvers. One wrong calculation and the margin disappears entirely. On the left, sheer rock face. On the right, open air and a long drop. A special permit from New Zealand authorities is required to drive it at all. Today, the canyon draws four-wheel drive tours and whitewater rafting groups down to the Shotover, but the geometry of the road is essentially unchanged from the Gold Rush era. Down in the canyon, the ruins of Skipper's Township still stand, a stone schoolhouse, a cemetery, the outlines of a community that the river's wealth briefly summoned and then abandoned. The past here is not reconstructed. It is simply still there, at the edge of the drop. Every driver who crosses the Vitim River Bridge unbuckles their seatbelt first, not out of carelessness, out of cold logic. If the vehicle goes into the river, the belt becomes a death sentence. Without it, there is at least a theoretical chance of escaping through the window before the car sinks. That single, wordless ritual tells you more about bridge number 8 on our list than any engineering report ever could. The Vitim River Bridge spans 570 meters across a fast, freezing river in the Siberian taiga on the boundary between Irkutsk Oblast and Zabaikalsky Krai. It was built for trains. Every element of its design, the span lengths, the load calculations, the spacing of the sleepers, was engineered for rail traffic. Automobiles were never part of the equation. When the railway line was decommissioned and abandoned, the bridge was simply left standing. No demolition, no conversion, no maintenance plan. The rails were eventually removed. The wooden sleepers stayed exactly where they were, unfastened, unleveled, unreplaced. What remains is a crossing with no guardrails, no side barriers, no road markings, and no solid surface. 2 rows of rotting timber sleepers run the length of the bridge, separated by gaps wide enough to see the river churning far below. The wood is waterlogged and warped. In winter, it freezes and becomes a skating rink suspended over open water. In summer, it swells and buckles. In fog, the far bank simply disappears. The recommended crossing speed is 5 to 10 kilometers per hour. And even at that pace, a single lapse in concentration can put a wheel through the gap between sleepers. None of this is a historical curiosity. The Vitim Bridge is an active road. The communities on either side of the river have no other crossing for many kilometers in any direction. They drive it in trucks, in aging Soviet-era four-wheel drives, in whatever they have, because there is no alternative. The unbuckling ritual is not a tradition anyone invented. It evolved, driver to driver, because the bridge kept proving it necessary. This is what infrastructure failure looks like when it becomes permanent. Not a disaster, but a daily negotiation with risk that locals have simply absorbed into routine. And if the Vitim Bridge represents improvisation dressed up as infrastructure, the next entry on our list is something else entirely. A hand-carved tunnel blasted through solid rock by people who stopped waiting for the government and picked up sledgehammers instead. 13 villagers built a road through a mountain using hammers and chisels. No engineers, no government funding, no safety standards. That is not a metaphor. It is the documented history of the Guoliang Tunnel, number 7 on our list, carved by hand through solid quartzite in the Taihang Mountains of Henan Province, central China. Why would 13 people attempt something like this? Because the alternative was permanent isolation. The village of Guoliang had been effectively cut off from the outside world for centuries. The only route in or out was a series of steps chipped into the cliff face, passable on foot, useless for wagons or goods. When the Chinese government declined to fund a proper road in 1972, the village didn't petition again. They picked up tools. From 1972 to 1977, those 13 men sold grain and livestock to buy equipment, then spent 5 years striking rock. One of them was killed during construction. What they left behind is a tunnel just over 1,200 meters long, roughly 4 meters wide, and no more than 5 meters tall. Approximately 30 windows punch through the outer wall at uneven intervals, not designed, not symmetrical, simply placed wherever the stone gave way under the chisel. There is no lighting inside. The floor is rough, broken by ridges of exposed rock. 2 vehicles cannot pass each other without careful maneuvering. Tourist buses crawl through in near darkness, drivers navigating by the pale rectangles of light from the next window. Outside those windows, the Taihang cliffs drop hundreds of meters. The paradox is precise. The tunnel's danger and its power come from exactly the same source. It was built without tolerances, without redundancy, without any of the invisible margins that make modern infrastructure feel safe. What 13 people accomplished in 5 years with hand tools is now a destination precisely because it should not exist. The road that followed was built by governments and armies and cost no less in human terms. The deadliest stretch of this road was built by hand. That single fact reframes everything else about the Karakoram Highway, the statistics, the altitude records, the scenery, because it means that every kilometer of this route exists only because someone decided it was worth dying for. At least 880 people did. That is the official count. The real number is almost certainly higher. Number 6 on our list. The highway runs 1,300 kilometers along one of the most geologically unstable corridors on Earth, linking Pakistan and China through the convergence zone of 3 mountain systems: the Himalayas, the Karakoram, and the Hindu Kush. The crust beneath it never fully settled. Tectonic plates are still colliding here. Glacial rivers undercut the road's foundations continuously, and the freeze-thaw cycle destroys the asphalt edge every single night. Construction took 20 years, from 1959 to 1979, with Pakistani military engineers and Chinese labourers cutting through rock using dynamite and, where dynamite was insufficient, by hand. The highest point is the Karakoram Pass at 4,693 metres above sea level, the highest paved international border crossing on the planet. At that elevation, the air holds roughly half the oxygen available at sea level. A sharp turn that would be routine at low altitude becomes a genuine physical challenge when your body is working at the edge of its aerobic capacity. There are no guardrails on most of the route. In many sections, there is no margin between the road surface and a vertical drop. Rockfalls are not incidents here, they are background conditions. In 2010, a landslide dammed the Hunza River and swallowed a section of the highway itself, creating the turquoise Atabad lakes that now appear in every travel photograph of the region. The same event that killed people and erased the road produced the landscape that draws visitors today. That is the Karakoram Highway in a single image, catastrophe and beauty occupying exactly the same coordinates. 666 kilometers. The number is not a coincidence, and the people who drive this road have never treated it as one. The Dalton Highway stretches from Fairbanks to the hamlet of Deadhorse on the shore of the Arctic Ocean, and its length matches, to the kilometre, the number that centuries of folklore have loaded with the darkest possible meaning. Alaska's truckers noticed long ago, they still notice. The road was built in 1974 in 5 months flat to supply the Prudhoe Bay oil fields. Speed was the only requirement. Permanence was not. The result is 666 kilometers of gravel, ice, and Arctic silence that crosses the Arctic Circle, climbs over the Brooks Range, and runs for hundreds of kilometers across permafrost and rust-colored tundra without a single town, a single fuel stop, a single medical facility within reach. 90% of the route has no mobile signal. In winter, temperatures drop below -60 degrees Celsius. At that point, metal behaves like glass. Diesel thickens to a gel. Wind builds whiteouts in seconds, erasing the road and everything on it. In summer, the danger shifts but does not shrink. The 18-wheelers that own this highway throw up dust clouds dense enough to hide oncoming traffic entirely. They do not slow down. They are carrying fuel that Arctic stations depend on to survive, and a schedule is a schedule. 3 fuel stops across the entire route, no guardrails, no traffic lights, no recovery vehicle within any useful range. A breakdown here is not an inconvenience. It is an emergency with a personal survival component attached. The Dalton is visually hypnotic and quietly terrifying at the same time. An endless gravel ribbon dissolving into an ochre horizon under a sky that can move from clear Arctic light to polar storm inside an hour. This is number 5 on our list. What comes next pulls us off the horizontal entirely and sends us upward onto the alpine switchbacks where altitude and speed meet at the edge of the possible. The most dangerous roads in the world rarely look dangerous. That is exactly the problem with the Stelvio Pass. At 2,757 meters above sea level in the Rhaetian Alps, on the border between the Italian provinces of Bolzano and Sondrio, the northern face of the pass is cut by 48 numbered hairpin bends, each marked with a stone post carrying its sequence number. The road has proper tarmac, guardrails on some sections, and functioning cafes at the summit. It looks, in other words, like a place that has been handled. It has not. Engineer Carl von Geiger laid out this route in 1825 on commission from the Austrian Empire, and the geometry he chose was dictated entirely by the terrain, not by any consideration of stopping distances or sightlines. The numbered posts were a practical tool for coachmen counting their way to the top. Today, they serve the same counting function for the thousands of motorcyclists and cyclists who flood the road every summer, turning certain stretches into a continuous, unregulated slalom. The physics that makes Stelvio genuinely hazardous are straightforward. Brake fluid in a car descending 48 consecutive tight curves with no long straight to allow cooling reaches boiling point within minutes. Boiling brake fluid means fading brakes, means no margin for the unexpected. And the unexpected is a structural feature of the road. Blind outer corners open in fractions of a second, and in high season, a descending cyclist at speed is a realistic presence behind every one of them. Buses and trucks require multi-point turns to clear the tightest bends, blocking the entire carriageway each time. The pass closes from November through May because snowfall does not reduce capacity, it eliminates it entirely. What earns Stelvio the fourth position in this ranking is the particular combination of genuine accessibility and concealed mechanical severity. The road invites confidence and then removes the conditions that confidence requires. A road built for mules and military wagons now carries 40-ton semi-trucks. That is not a metaphor. That is the D915 highway through the Derabashi switchbacks in northeastern Turkey, and it ranks third on our list. In 1916, Imperial Russian military engineers carved a 106-kilometer route through the Pontic mountain range between Bayburt and Trabzon. The purpose was tactical: move troops, artillery and supplies across terrain that had no existing passage. They built what the terrain allowed, which meant 13 hairpin bends, climbing 323 meters over 5 kilometers, with an average gradient exceeding 6%, and individual corners hitting angles that would be flagged as critical under any modern road safety standard. There are no barriers, no crash rails, no retention nets, no guardrails of any kind. The edge of the compacted dirt track is the edge of the mountain. More than a century later, nothing essential has changed. The geometry is the same. The surface is the same. The absence of protective infrastructure is the same. What has changed is the weight and size of the vehicles using it, because this remains the only road connecting the Black Sea coast to the interior of the province. There is no bypass, no parallel route, no alternative. Local residents, freight drivers, and regional buses all use Derabashi because they have no other option. At each of the 13 bends, a truck driver executes a multi-point turn with the front axle projecting over open air. The maneuver is not dramatic by choice, it is required by geometry. The road surface is too narrow for two vehicles to pass, without one of them stopping and pressing as close to the rock face as possible, while the other negotiates the corner in stages. The mathematics of the gradient, the width of the track, and the radius of the turns leave no margin for error and no room for equipment failure. From above, the road looks like a careful stitch sewn into a vertical wall. From below, it disappears into cloud. The combination of historical construction standards, complete absence of safety barriers, and extreme topography makes Derabashi one of the most technically demanding and dangerous road segments in Europe and Asia Minor. 13 named corners on a known route. What follows on this list offers far less certainty than that. The wrecked vehicles at the bottom of the gorge are not an accident of neglect. They are left there on purpose. No one removes them. They sit 1 kilometer below the road, rusting quietly, and every driver on the way up to Fairy Meadows passes directly above them. That is the second most dangerous road on this list, and the debris field below it is its most honest safety briefing. Fairy Meadows Road runs for 16 kilometers above the Karakoram Highway in Pakistan's Gilgit-Baltistan region. It connects the KKH to the base camp beneath Nanga Parbat, the 9th highest mountain on Earth, and the one climbers have long called the Killer Mountain. The road has existed since roughly the 1990s. It was not built by machines. Local villagers cut it by hand directly into the cliff face hanging over a gorge nearly 1,000 meters deep. The width is just enough for a single jeep to pass. There are no guardrails, there are no barriers of any kind between the track and the open air. The surface is loose soil, shattered rock, and channels gouged by rainwater. During monsoon season, sections of the road don't just deteriorate, they slide. The slope moves and the road moves with it. A wrong turn on a tight switchback leaves a vehicle with nothing to catch it. No barrier, no shoulder, just the long fall to the canyon floor where those rusting frames have been sitting for years. None of that stops the traffic. Tourists, mountaineers, and local pilgrims ride regularly in the open beds of pickup trucks driven by men who have memorized every meter of this route. There is no mobile signal up here, no rescue infrastructure, no room for a second attempt at a bad corner. The drivers operate on experience alone, with a steadiness that reads less like courage and more like a deeply internalized understanding of exactly how little margin exists. Fairy Meadows, when you reach it, an open alpine meadow with Nanga Parbat filling the sky, is genuinely extraordinary. The road that gets you there holds the number 2 position on this list. The road officially ranked as the most lethal on the planet comes next. The most dangerous road on Earth is not a winding mountain pass in a war zone or an uncharted track through a remote desert. It is a tourist destination. Every year, cyclists pay to ride it. They come from dozens of countries, rent mountain bikes, and descend 70 kilometers through waterfalls and cloud, above drops that fall 600 meters straight down. There are no guardrails. The road is sometimes 3 meters wide, sometimes less, and it has an official title, the deadliest road in the world, certified by the Inter-American Development Bank. North Yungas Road in Bolivia, El Camino de la Muerte, earns that rank with geography alone. It connects the mountain pass of La Cumbre, sitting at 4,650 meters above sea level, to the jungle town of Coroico at 1,200 meters. The descent is nearly vertical by any road-building standard. 3,500 meters of altitude lost over 70 kilometers, carved into sheer cliff face. On one side, rock. On the other, nothing. The surface was cut directly into the Andean wall in the 1930s by Paraguayan prisoners of war following the Chaco War. They were not engineers. They were forced labor. They cut where they were told to cut. During rainy season, the road becomes something beyond difficult. Waterfalls pour directly across the surface, not alongside it. The rock turns to moving water. Fog rises from the canyon so thick it erases everything beyond the hood of a vehicle. Bolivian authorities estimated that before the early 2000s, between 200 and 300 people died on this road every year. Hundreds of wooden crosses mark those deaths along the roadside. Each cross is a specific person, a specific vehicle, a specific second when the edge gave way. A new paved bypass now handles freight traffic. The old road was supposed to fade out. Instead, it found a second life. The same fog, the same drops, the same waterfalls, now sold as an extreme cycling experience. One of the most counterintuitive facts about this road is not how many people died on it. It is how many keep choosing to come back. Bolivia's most dangerous road has an official name for a reason. Death Road. Not folklore, not branding, a government designation backed by body counts that once reached 300 per year. That single fact tells you everything about what this list is and what it is not. These are not 13 roads chosen because they photograph well from a drone. They are 13 places where the margin for error collapsed to nothing and where the evidence is measured in wreckage and absence. From Norwegian coastal highways where waves break across the tarmac above open Atlantic water, to Bolivian fog that swallows trucks whole. The geography shifts, but the logic stays the same. Human ambition built these routes through terrain that never agreed to be crossed. The Andes twist into switchbacks that punish inattention. The Himalayas deliver mud so deep it becomes a mechanism of disappearance. Quartzite mountains in ranges few people can name on a map were bored through by hand and machine, leaving tunnels where a wrong line means a wall at speed. Wooden bridges over Siberian rivers flex under loads they were not designed to carry. Arctic ice roads exist for months, then stop existing without warning. 13 routes across multiple continents, multiple climates, multiple centuries of construction. What connects them is not aesthetic, it is consequence. Every road on this list earned its place through documented accidents, through fatalities, through the accumulated record of drivers who made it and drivers who did not. If you are watching this and thinking you would drive one of these someday, that instinct is worth examining. These roads were here long before the idea occurred to you. They will remain long after. Tell us in the comments which of the 13 you consider the most dangerous and what makes you say that.